Good evening, and welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and now powered by our first sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us. Help support the movement and help fund the movement. We believe in freedom of movement, and freedom of movement is exactly what this establishment wants to take from you. I am your host, Royce White, and I am here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Tonight we have another incredible family and friends episode. Our guest is none other than the great Jason Whitlock. Jason Whitlock is the host of the show Fearless with Jason Whitlock on YouTube. Many of you are familiar with Jason Whitlock from our conversations together and his incredible career as a sports journalist and now cultural and political commentary. I look forward to you hearing our conversation. We get into a little bit more of Jason's personal backstory, and we're going to continue to have Jason back on the show after much criticism that this interview took way too long. Without further ado, I bring to you the great Jason Whitlock. Welcome, Jason Whitlock, to Please Call Me Crazy. We appreciate your time, and we want to definitely start off by saying thank you for your allowing me to share your incredible Fearless platform. Many of my subscribers and listeners and viewers all around the world email in, they message in and say how much they enjoy Fearless and our conversations, and that they first found me watching and listening to Fearless, whether it be on YouTube or online on the audio platforms. So we want to say thank you from everybody here at Please Call Me Crazy and Free People Radio.
With that introduction,
Yeah.
I'm shocked that I had to beg to get on this show, but I'll take you at your word that you're appreciative of it. But I had to beg to get on this show. But go ahead,
Come
Royce.
on, don't start that. You're the busy one. You're one of the biggest names in the business right now. We wanted to bring you in right away, but you had I talked to your people. For everybody out there, Jason Whitlock has his people behind the scenes.
Yeah, well,
We called your people.
this
Your
is your
people said,
20th show, so I'm the 20th most important interview. I know where I stand. Go ahead.
"Oh man, stop it, stop it! See, don't say that, because I'll ask you to come on once a week if you don't be careful here." So no, we do appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it. And I told you on the show too. Up until we met, I was aware of you, and many of my close friends. We followed you and your commentary and things around a number of issues regarding sports, but culture too. But I hadn't met you. But once I met you, and we connected in that first interview, I think we had maybe a year back or a little bit over a year now. Before then, nobody in the mainstream media would even allow me to have a platform to talk about anything. And I sort of rejected the offers from your Vice and HBO and some of these other platforms to do it the way they wanted to do it. But nobody, even Rachel Maddow and some of those things I was doing during the George Floyd uprising, nobody would let me have an extended time to talk the way that you and I talk. And I'm happy and thankful that you gave me that platform and that people seem to enjoy our style of dialogue. But today, and I told you I was very excited to interview you, and I was gonna do something that I hadn't seen personally, that I'm interested in, and I'm interested in the Jason Whitlock backstory, and that's what we do here at Please Call Me Crazy with all of our guests the first go around. So let's start with the Jason Whitlock backstory: where you grew up, how you grew up, mom, dad, the culture, the entire deal, and bring me to whatever point you want to stop.
Well, I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana. Uh, Poor little ghetto boy. My dad didn't graduate high school. Was drafted into the army. My mother was a factory worker. Her father was a factory worker and a little bit of a hustler, gambler, ran numbers in Indianapolis. And so my parents divorced when I was about 5 years old. And my mother moved us around the corner from where we were living into this little tiny, probably 500, 600, 500, 600 feet square foot apartment at best. And my dad he left my mother and they got divorced because he got married to his second wife.
Hmm.
And but I Stayed very close to my father. Me and my brother, obviously living with my mother, and then when my father got remarried, I got a stepbrother and stepsister who very close to, particularly my stepsister. But my stepbrother was actually pretty important in my life just because he liked sports, and my own natural brother wasn't really big into sports, and so my stepbrother kind of filled that void for me in terms of having someone to play sports with and look up to in that regard. But probably in I think third or fourth grade, we're living in the hood. Me and my mother, and my brother, and me and my brother go spend the weekend with my father and my stepmother and her family. And we didn't know this at the time, but my mother was at home alone, and someone broke into our apartment, and she just, as the guy's climbing through the window, she just happened to get up and want something to drink and walk into the kitchen. And here's this dude sitting in the window about to jump in. She screams, he jumps out. My mother at that time makes the decision, oh, I'm moving us up out of the hood. I'm gonna have to get a second job or do whatever's necessary to get us up out of the hood. And so she moves us into a working class area in Indianapolis that's quite a bit better than where we were living,
Mm.
and had this very nice high school that was a bit of a football power. And I just, in third, fourth grade, I just really get into athletics as a kid. I'm in an environment where the kids are into athletics, and the grade school, the junior highs, and all throughout high school. And so lived with my mother all the way up through my junior year of high school, and then her factory job uh, transferred her to Kansas City, and I moved in with my father, who again I'd always maintained a close relationship with. My brother, who was older than me, had joined the Air Force, and so, but at this time, my father, he's on his rear end. He had owned a tavern in the inner city in Indianapolis, got behind on his taxes. IRS came in and treated him real bad, took everything from him. And so when I moved in with my dad for my senior year of high school, we're living in a one bedroom, 400 square foot apartment in the hood. And that's where I spent my senior year of high school, captain of my high school football team that was nationally ranked. And I was the captain, and Jeff George was our star player, the quarterback. And, we had an unbelievable undefeated season, won the state championship. I think finished ranked number 9 in the country. I got a
Mm.
football scholarship to Ball State University, and you know the rest to some degree is history. I'm probably leaving out the most influential part of my growing up years is probably my grandmother, my mother's
Please.
mother,
Yeah, tell us.
Mama Lovey Kennedy. Everybody just called her Mama Lovey. Uh, she was just an amazing human being, someone who loved Jesus, and uh, got me and all my cousins and my brother and everybody involved in the church. And it was in my childhood where I accepted Christ as my Lord and personal Savior, and that was under her discipleship. And but that I had a very happy childhood, a very uh, good childhood. I don't ever remember, even when me and my dad were living in some real poverty, I don't ever remember being unhappy
Mm.
or feeling unloved. Never felt unsafe in the hood or whatever. I just have fond memories of my childhood. I was very popular, very personable in school. I had some behavioral issues in school, and I wasn't a great student in school because I just didn't apply myself that way. I applied myself more socially and having fun and athletically at school. But uh, I just remember my growing up years as awesome.
And so you now you get a scholarship to Ball State. Well, first, Talk. We've talked about this a little bit before. You've mentioned this on the show. I'm sure people are interested. Talk about that tavern. Talk about what it was like growing up around the tavern. See, me, I grew up around the barbershop. My aunts owned hair salons and were involved in the hair business. And my aunt actually owned her own hair salon slash barbershop for over 30 years in the community. So I got to grow up on the barbershop side, which most of the time I hung out and I answered phones, I sweeped up hair. You heard a lot, you met a lot of people, you understood the community at an adult level at a young age, and it made you grow up quick. I'm sure the same was was the same with the tavern. Tell me about that a little bit.
My dad's first small business was a barbershop called the Knot Hole. And so that's my first memory of my dad's barbershop, the Knot Hole and the barbershop and hanging out with those guys. Then when he met his second wife, she was a barmaid at a very popular inner city bar called Red's. And that's what I think gave my father an interest in opening his own bar. And so I watched and participated in my dad building a bar called Jimmy's J Bar J with his own hands. Me and my brother would go every weekend and just do whatever him and his friends told us to do as they helped construct this bar from hand. And yeah, I it's one of my greatest memories, Jimmy's J Bar J, and just the guys that hung out there. My dad's friends were like my idols, and they were just working class factory worker type guys that on weekends uh, wanted to be players. Bottom line, and wanted to dress up and and be the cool guys. And my
They were
dad was the
players.
coolest of
They were
all of them.
players. They were
Yeah,
players. Yeah.
yeah. My dad was the coolest of all of them. He had a two-tone Cadillac Seville, and always, always in a three-piece suit. You know, cut, shoes, socks, the whole nine. Just a really sharp dressed. And my dad was a very good looking guy, unlike myself. My dad looked like Billy D. Williams. Just women love my father. Cadillac, the clothes, the business. He was hood rich and a hood celebrity. Everybody in Indianapolis knew Jimmy Whitlock, and so I took a lot of pride. I mean, telling it, I'm Jimmy Whitlock's son. When you just a little
Yeah. Yeah.
10, 12-year-old kid, that carried a lot of weight. I'm Jimmy Whitlock's, and people, oh, you Jimmy's son, bro. Uh, and so just hanging around those guys, my uncle, Uncle John, hung out at my dad's bar. My father's brother, my other uncle, Uncle Kenneth, worked for my father. And so it just, that was my little oasis. And, we would sit on a bar stool all day. And then at night, if we were there, he'd put us in his back office and, we'd wait till he was ready to leave. But I spent a lot of weekends and time with my dad and people at the bar and talking sports and talking about life and overhearing their philosophies, probably some conversations maybe I shouldn't have heard. It's funny. You didn't ask this question, but it's just a funny story about my dad that I've talked about. Is my dad's a very good looking guy, known as a ladies' man. But my dad, because of his age and how he grew up, my dad was pretty prejudiced. He did not like white people, and he would brag about. Ain't I think I can keep it real on this show.
Of
Ain't no
course.
white woman ever getting this dick. She ain't good enough. He would always talk. That's how he would talk. And as I got older, and it became apparent that like, oh, Jason likes white girls. There's a little white girl at his school that he likes or whatever.
Yeah.
He'd always stress, you know, that dick. You don't get that dick to no white girl. Blah, blah. And I'm just telling you how we talk. I'm not proud of it, but this is just factual how he talked. And then as I got older, his friends who became friends of mine was like, Jason, that's some bullshit. I know the white girls your dad was tapping.
Don't let him
So,
tell you. Don't let him run that on you, Jason. I know what he's doing.
yes, and
Yeah.
so I mean, this is Royce. This is already quite a different conversation than what we have on Fearless. But I'm
Yeah.
just keeping it. I would talk this way on Fearless. I don't curse on that show. Or I try not to, but I'm just reflecting the reality of me growing up and what shaped me. I wanted to be like my dad. I idolized my dad. He had a tremendous work ethic. He had a tremendous set of values. Again, he was a ladies' man, and I'm not calling that high character. It wasn't, but all the rest of his values and very, very on point, and stuck with me, and particularly, he was like a Booker T. Washington type. It wasn't about, again, he didn't like white people, but I never saw him mistreat a white person. And I never saw him delve into excuses about any success, failure that he did or didn't have. He believed in making his own way, felt like America offered him the opportunity to build a life that he liked. And so when he had success, again, he built a business that catered to a black crowd. My dad built a brand new home in the black community where he was happy, not very far from his second bar that he ran for, from my, I think, sophomore year in college all the way until he passed. And this is what I call my favorite place on earth, the Masterpiece Lounge. And because it was my favorite place on earth. And so my dad was just a self-made person, didn't believe in excuses, and didn't allow me, and was pretty hard on me because, again, even though I liked my dad, I didn't mimic all of his behaviors,
Mm.
and so he always wanted me to dress like him, suited all the time, and I'm like, Daddy, that ain't me, you know. But anyway, dad had a big influence on me, and my mother just created a great foundation of support, and I think her and my dad disagreed when she moved us out to this working class area. It was predominantly white, and her and my dad disagreed about that big time.
Mm.
Uh, my dad ended up apologizing after looking at all the success I had athletically and getting the scholarship, and just that I did, he saw many of his own friends, kids, fall into trouble,
Culture.
getting locked up, the culture swallowing them,
Hmm.
and he ended up saying, Joyce, you made the right choice for our kids, and I thank you for that. Uh, but anyway, that's love Jimmy's J Bar J. Love the Masterpiece Lounge even more. The Masterpiece Lounge is on still open. I ended up selling it to a different group of people, but it's 38th and Sherman right there in the hood, and we would cook out there and play dominoes and play cards and listen to some really good music and just talk spit to each other.
And so, tell me a little bit about you getting the scholarship to Ball State. You reference it a lot, but athlete to athlete, what was it like at Ball State? What was that? What's the football life like at the college level? My best friend AJ Barker played at the U. One of my other best friends, Marcus Williams, played at NDSU. They won a couple of national titles at NDSU. My friend Rashid, he played at the U. Chantrell, he played in the NFL. I got a bunch of friends who played in the NFL. But we never really talk about football when we talk, because a lot of them played basketball too. That was our relationship. But what was it like being a college football player?
Royce, it's something in real time I didn't appreciate or even fully grasp. And some of that comes from the fact no one in my family had ever gone off to college.
Mm.
My stepsister went to the IUPUI, Indiana University, Purdue University, right there in Indianapolis. She took some classes and ended up getting a degree from IUP, but no one had ever gone off anywhere to college. So, and I knew so little about college that I just thought, well, man, I'm going to go to college and party and kick it and have a good time. And yeah, I'll play a little football because there was part of me. You don't have this experience, but I was a great football player in fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th grade, 11th grade, and and I would say, and I say this in all seriousness, like in eighth grade, I was as good as any football player in America in eighth grade. And then it just started going downhill from there. I was 6 foot, 225 pounds in eighth grade.
Right.
Never really got any taller, kept getting heavier and slower. I ran on the 4x100 relay team in eighth grade.
Wow.
I was a beast on the football field, a good basketball player, good in track and field. And then my athleticism just stopped and my growth virtually came to a stop. And so I became so you're an eighth grader and in those I'm thinking about being in the NFL. I'm thinking about going to a Big Ten school or Notre Dame. Everybody's going to want me. And so part of what I foolishly, when I got to be my senior year in college, I'm leading this nationally ranked football team, and Jeff George is getting recruited by everybody. I'm actually disappointed that I'm having to go to Ball State, even though it's Division I football. And so I didn't go to Ball State with the right attitude.
Mm,
And I thought I was better than Ball State. And I
mm,
thought I could just show up and be better than everybody else at Ball State. And so for the first 2 years at Ball State, I rode the bench because I had a horrible attitude and an even worse work ethic. And I got sideways with the offensive line coach. And so there were players that weren't nearly as good as me playing in front of me. And I'm mad and bitter and, blaming everybody else but myself. And then my third year, something finally clicked in my head and I put some work in during the off season, like real work, came into camp in much better shape. And just so happened someone quit and they had no choice but to give me a look on the
opportunity.
offense. They had already given up on. And so I
Mm,
can remember the scrimmage and I can remember blowing the coaches away because I had to block for an entire scrimmage our best defensive player, a kid named Troy Schultz. And can't say that I dominated him, but I frustrated the heck out of him for the entire scrimmage. Anybody you throwing the tape on, it was a draw. And the coach was like, oh my God, this is what we've been having on the bench. And so started playing after that and became a starter. And my fourth year of school, we started out 6-0 and started getting ratings in the top 25, and we ended up losing the MAC championship game to a Western Michigan team that was just as good as us. And I had to play against this guy named Joel Smingy, who played 10, 12 years in the NFL. I think when he retired, he was the Jacksonville Jaguars' all-time sack leader. If they
mm.
had counted the sacks he got off of me in the MAC championship game, he'd probably be the all-time leader. But I enjoyed my college experience, but I did not take full advantage of it. And I didn't even come back and play my fifth year because one, I played on a torn ACL that they had misdiagnosed and said it was just stretched. Come to find out it was torn. And so I didn't come back and play my fifth year and said, you know what, I'm going to spend this year doing what I haven't done for 4 years. I'm going to go to class and I'm going to become a student and work on my career as a journalist. I got to start preparing for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did my fifth year. They allowed me to keep my scholarship by the grace of God. and and so that's when, and it's like I can remember, I think it was May 5th or May 6th was the day before my college graduation in 1990. And I made a pledge to myself, I'm never smoking weed again, and I'm going to take life more seriously. And Went to graduation that next day, and probably never smoked weed again for 10 years. And just threw myself into uh, my career and wanting to, like, I don't want to blow my journalism career the way that I blew my football career. And it's not, again, at my height, I was not going to play in the NFL. It's probably good enough if I really worked. I could have got a tryout in the NFL, but I wasn't going to play in the NFL. I wanted to be the best journalist, sports journalist in the country. And so
Mm.
I just, my whole mentality just kind of changed. I was like, and I took journalism very serious, took the work very serious, and just threw my life into that, and it paid off. And many of my friends who were upset that I didn't play my fifth year, used to tease me about my fifth year, they all now say, "Man, what an amazing blessing! You didn't play your fifth year, and you went to go write for the school newspaper, and you actually took school seriously." Because
Yeah.
again, I was known as a social animal and a pretty good football player and a good guy, but none of my friends were like, "Oh, Jason's going to be really successful in his career." Nobody saw it. Nobody saw it coming. I didn't even see it. I didn't even see it coming. Just I graduated with a 2.3 GPA out of Ball State, and I could name the girl who's probably sitting around there going, and I'm probably responsible for 2 points of that 2.3. Jason's probably responsible for point three. Not gonna name her name. She'd probably sue me and take most of my money because maybe she feels responsible. But uh, anyway, I don't know. Just I got to be 22, 23, and just started taking life far more seriously and became a serious person and a serious journalist.
And let's pivot to the journalism for a moment because I would venture to guess that your show Fearless over the last few years has become so big and it has had so much success and there's such a great conversation you have going on there that many people, well, I hear personally myself, but even beyond me, before we ever hooked up, many people only know you from Fearless now, or they know you in the technological age. They don't remember your work at Fox. They don't remember your journalism, your column, how good your column is. Many of the people who watch Fearless probably don't even read the column. I read the column. I get it every morning. But just how good of a journalist you are. Walk us through the early stages of your journalism career, where you got your start, where it transformed, and then kind of your entry into the big leagues with Fox and what that was like.
So when I got out of college in 1990, I was not qualified for full time work, and I knew that. And it's like I spent a year being a serious student. I got a 4.0 my last semester. I wrote for the school paper. I really threw some effort into it. But when I got out of college, I wasn't ready for full time work, and no one would give me a full time job. And I had no one to blame but myself. And so I ended up having to take a part time job for $5 an hour at the Bloomington Herald Times, small newspaper where Indiana University is. Uh, Going to college, being the first person to graduate from my family from college, I really wasn't expecting to take a $5 an hour job, but that's what I had to do.
Mm.
And I accepted responsibility for that and took that job with great enthusiasm. And when I got there, again, I wasn't ready, but I was ready to work harder than everybody else. The sports editor there was a guy named Bob Hamill, who was Bobby Knight's best friend. He covered Indiana University basketball, an older guy that took a liking to my work ethic and said, he looked at my early work and was like, oh my God, is this kid going to make it? And then he saw me because Bob Hamill probably got the greatest work ethic in sports writing history, in my opinion. And he saw me leave the office every night only after he left. And I would be there till 2 or 3 in the morning because I mean Bob Hamill would work all night, and I would be there that late reading, practicing on my writing, doing anything I could, trying to catch up so that I was qualified for a full time job. And uh, it took about a year. and I talked the Charlotte Observer into giving me a chance at a full time job working in a bureau in Rock Hill, South Carolina, covering Little League and high school sports. I had
Mm.
to go down to Rock Hill, South Carolina, and do a 2 week audition for the job. They had never done that, but I was so relentless about wanting the job and writing letters to them. And someone there showed a tiny bit of interest, and I just ran with it, blew up their phone, uh, kept writing them letters, sending them examples of my work. And they was like, "All right, come down here for 2 weeks. We'll try you out to see if you're qualified to cover little league and high school sports." Go down there for 2 weeks, and I crush it. I crush it. Woman, I'm not gonna call her name, her last name. Her woman's name is Trish. She's the editor of that bureau. She brings me into her office and tells me, "I'm giving you the job," and then immediately pivots into, "I'm giving you this job as an affirmative action hire." And keep in mind, I have no political affiliation. I don't even really know anything about politics at this time. And so I say to her, I was like, "What you mean you giving me this job on affirmative action? I just came down here and tried out for 2 weeks. You ain't doing me no favors." And she starts stuttering and stammering. And I'm like, "Don't hire me because I'm black. I just came down here for 2 weeks and showed you I can do the job. Why are you telling me about this affirmative action stuff?" Well, blah, blah, blah. And she went ahead and gave me the job, $403 a week. And again, it's not that I had a mindset that I was better than that, because I wasn't. I was just happy to be getting the job. But for $403 a week, I just came down here and slept in a hotel, a Motel 8 or something, for two
Mm-hmm.
weeks, did nothing but work, showed you I could do the job, and you're treating me like I should be happy that you're willing to pay me $403 a week. That was my first little like thing, like, oh man, these liberals, they try to jam you up mentally off top. And again, I wasn't thinking any of this. I'm just me. I'm just Jimmy Whitlock's son, Joyce Whitlock's son, Lovey Kennedy's grandson. None of this is connecting with me politically, but again, just instinctively, I don't do me no favors. Not after I just what I just did. And so when I go home, get my stuff, come back, I work at the Charlotte Observer at this Rock Hill bureau for 14 months. I put on a Jordan like performance over these 14 days. Trust me, ain't nobody ever touched what I did in that bureau in them 14 months. I'm covering little league and high school sports in a bureau that has its own little section of the paper that only goes out to a small handful of people. During this 14-month period, I end up writing 6 to 8 stories that are on the front page of the entire Charlotte Observer that
Wow.
goes out to the entire state. People that had worked in that bureau for 5 years had maybe had one story on the front page. People far more experienced than me. I had 6 to 8. I was doing work. I was doing work that was because again, I was the only one that would think like this. This is You're too young to remember this, but there was a time when kids used to wear these Malcolm X hats. It was very popular in the early 1990s, and because I'm the only one that is thinking in this mind, I was like, let me do a story on the significance. Do the black kids know what they're doing when they put this hat on? Do they know what Malcolm X stood for? So I go out and interview kids and blah, blah. They put it on the front page of the paper.
Mm.
No one white had thought to do that. Jodeci at this time was a little known R&B group, but they're from Charlotte, North Carolina. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
hey man, there's this group Jodeci blowing up. I should interview them and write a story about them. I think the album Forever My Lady comes out or whatever.
Gotta love Jodeci. You
Yeah,
gotta love
I got the
Jodeci.
story. I've interviewed Casey and JoJo and Devontae story on the front page again because Nobody, they're not operating in that lane. They're not thinking Jodeci got next or whatever. And so the performance I did in Charlotte made news all over the country. And the next thing you know, the Ann Arbor News is asking me to if I'm interested in covering the Fab Five basketball team.
Wow.
This is my big break. Fab Five are national news. Chris Webber, Jalen Rose, and all that cover the Michigan football team and the Michigan basketball team in Ann Arbor. That's my big break. I'm now writing a national story, and I think, uh, 24, 25 at the time, not that much older than Jalen Rose and Chris Webber and these guys, you know, understand the culture that they're trying to represent or the culture they're exploiting because I'm a part of it
Mm-hmm.
and started writing and covering them in Ann Arbor. And that's when people like that are on ESPN, Dick Vitale, and when they're coming to do Fab Five games, they're referencing my work on national TV. That put me on the map. Spent 2 years there, and then at age 27, I got my really big break. I got to be the sports columnist at the Kansas City Star at age 27. That's, you know, that's it's not unprecedented, but only the best of the best get columns at that early of an age. I did in Kansas City, in a city that had pro sports and mattered. And so I get to Kansas City in 1994 and have immediate impact in Kansas City. They never had a columnist like me. Within 6 to 12 months, I'm on the cover of the Columbia Journalism Review magazine with Tom Brokaw, somebody else, big national name on the cover, along with
Mm-hmm.
me. Uh, you know, and so ever since 1994, I was a big deal in sports writing and a big deal in journalism. And then in 2007, when the Don Imus, Rutgers, nappy-headed hose things happens,
Mm-hmm.
I write a piece that Oprah loves, and so Oprah puts me on her show for 2 straight days, talking about hip hop music and how like what Ima said isn't great, but if we don't clean up hip hop music, that's what really denigrates black people and black women.
Yeah.
And that's unprecedented. No sports writer ever been on Oprah. No, that really took people by storm. And in that same year, I won some national writing awards that sports writers had never won. Uh, you know, I say this. I can't. It's not what I'm not bragging. I'm just facting. I went on like a 15-year run as the most important sports columnist in America and the best. Did the sports industry ever give me those flowers? No, because the stuff that I was writing blew up many left wing narratives and approved narratives. I'm not political. I'm just someone that follows the truth wherever it goes. And the stuff that I was writing blew up the stuff that the media wanted to promote. And so I could never get the mainstream sports media industry on board with me. I made them uncomfortable. I made a lot of their work look dishonest and
Mm-hmm.
disingenuous.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that world, like Scripps Howard giving me the national journalism world for commentary, which again never goes to and never has since I won it in 2007, gone to a sports writer. They gave it to me. That year, people get irritated when I say it, but I should have won the Pulitzer Prize for commentary if the world were fair. But the world's not. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
But I had a tremendous career as a sports writer. And in 2010, I figured out like, man, this newspaper industry is just stupid. It's not doing the proper things to protect itself. It's not on stable ground. They're slashing salaries and they're not taking proper decisions to improve their industry. Let me move into the television space or let me move full time. I'd already worked for ESPN on a part time basis while
Well, just to
working
stop
for,
you, just
yeah.
to stop you there, Jason. I want everybody to understand. If you watch Jason on Fearless, he writes these fire starters himself. Okay, this is him writing the beginnings of these shows. Am I right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So, but that I mean, it's of course it's nothing to you, but people really, I don't think people understand that you write all of this stuff yourself, and if they're a casual fan, they come on and they see the beginning and people love it. But every day you write these columns, and it's not average column work. I mean, this is like grade A. You can't find this type of columnist work anywhere in the industry around any issue, let alone the blend of sports and current pop culture and politics. It's just I got to give you your flowers while we're here. But go ahead, tell me about Fox
Well,
and
I'm
getting
gonna
there.
follow up on your point because it
Mm-hmm.
is. I don't think this way, but you're right. People, I've been accused of. Accused is the wrong word, but I've had people think all throughout my career. You don't write that; the editors do. I had a woman in Kansas City who liked me, worked at the Kansas City Star alongside me.
Mm-hmm.
She thought because she asked, she goes, "Yeah, I heard that other people write your columns." I'm like, "Really?" I said, "Who at the Kansas City Star could write the kind of stuff that I'm writing it? And if they could do it, why weren't they doing it before I got here?"
Right.
And 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 I'm telling you, this is a woman that liked me. 'Cause, You know, we dated.
Right.
she this will sound crazy, but she asked. She goes, "I heard a rumor that they recruited you out of jail." And I'm like, "For real?" And she's like, "Yes, that's like these were the kind of rumors and gossip and
My my
stuff
my
that was
jail
going
my
on."
jail notepads must have been legendary then, right?
and and so it's like they had never seen anything like me. And so I could tell stories where people would say, "Oh my God, look how racist they were," and it's really like, nah, they're just uninformed and had never seen or met anyone like me. And I'll say this, Royce, having gone through this industry, many of the black journalists that are out front and center, they don't write their own stuff, or the quality of it is so poor. That's why people are so shocked. Like, Jason Whitlock's doing this himself. I, no, I know how this person here or this big name person there. I know how their work is treated. Surely the same thing's going on with Whitlock. And I've had people, white and black, try to take credit for uh, my work and say, "Oh yeah, I did that," or "I ghost wrote this." I did, and that's one of the reasons why I take so much satisfaction in the fact I've worked so many different places because I'm able to tell people like, "You think whoever these ghostwriters are, they go in all these different places where I've worked and had the exact same impact everywhere I go? Is
Mm.
there's some little pocket magical white man that's writing my stuff or so that's a joke. It's an insult. And so I like now I did this at the Kansas City Star. I did it at the Ann Arbor News. I did it at AOL Sports, ESPN, Fox Sports, Outkick, The Blaze. I go, trust me, guys, it's me. I don't have some pack, and if somebody read my early writing, I would get them being like, "Who's doing this?" I read Whitlock's work when he got out of college. I read his work at the Bloomington Herald Times. and relentless work and a great editor at the Charlotte Observer, a guy named Bill O'Connor, basically trained me up in a 3 month period. So again, I said I worked at the Charlotte Observer for 14 months. It took 3 months for me to figure it out. It took 3 months of me dealing with this editor, Bill O'Connor, who was a brutal editor, but he was a very effective editor. And I could take it. Many people couldn't. I would say this dude would break people down and they'd be crying at his death. It was nothing to me. It was like, it's like, this is how football coaches talk. Very
Right.
direct. You
Yeah.
know, this is great. It takes all
Your
the
your piece is
mystery out
terrible.
of
Try
everything.
again. Right.
Yeah, took all the mystery out of everything. He's just very direct, and so it taught me how to write. I've always been a clever person and a quick thinker, and I just needed to learn the basics of writing. And Bill O'Connor did that for me, and the rest is kind of history. But it has baffled people, and they think that what's going on there, who's helping him, and you know I can't say no one's helping me because I've had a lot of people help me along the way. But trust me, I'm writing this stuff. This is me.
Yeah, now tell me about Fox. Tell me about Fox and your work at Fox, and you start to move into having your own show, and then tell me how that relationship came about, how it unfolded, and then when you make the decision to go off on your own and do your own thing.
So in 2010, when I left the Kansas City Star, my first move was to Fox Sports.
Mhm.
And that was primarily a writing thing. At that time, they were investing in their website, and I was the star of their website. And they paid me very well to write for their website and to do some occasional television stuff. And so I moved to LA, went full speed on that for 3 years. And then ESPN recruited me to come back and start the Undefeated because it was crystal clear in 2013. I was the best sports writer in the country, and particularly the best black sports writer in the country. And they wanted that to be the head of the Undefeated project. I got politically assassinated there. Like my enemies were much smarter than I was when I went back to ESPN the second time. I am thinking I'm living in one world where my work speaks for itself and the merit of what I had done had gotten me this position and protected me. My enemies were like, nah, Jason, you're not a leftist. We're not letting you have this position. We're going to make things so unstable around you and so hostile around you that ESPN will have to fire you at some point.
And so this is
And
like, is this like executives, other journalists, other producers on the
all
videos, everybody?
executives,
Okay.
I'll name a few just because I'm at a point where I just don't care. But it's a black dude at ESPN named Rob King. That's who I was supposed to directly report to. He's involved with the left wing mafia. He's a politician. He just recently got fired for some kind of sexual harassment at
Of
ESPN.
course. Oh,
But that's who I
classic.
first that's who I first reported to.
Yeah.
And he just wouldn't speak with me or engage with me. And he
Mhm.
did everything to undermine me the first year I was at ESPN. They wouldn't let me hire anybody. I'm running the undefeated for a year. They wouldn't allow me to hire anybody. I had plenty of people that wanted to work with me and work for me. Then there was a white dude named John Kozner that I eventually reported to. He didn't want to do the project. He thought it was a waste of time, a waste of money, didn't think it would be successful, didn't want to deal with the heat of having to defend me from all the leftists and the LGBTQ and all the people inside of ESPN. He didn't want the hassle of doing that. So he helped undermine it. And it's to some degree, I feel sorry for these guys. I'm not angry with them because there's a lot of heat that comes along with being associated with me. At this time, I didn't realize that though. I just thought I'm the best sports writer in the country. Who wouldn't want to be associated with me?
Right.
I didn't realize my point of view made everybody completely uncomfortable with me. I thought it made some people, but not everybody.
Yeah.
But at a place like ESPN, owned by Disney, HR department run by an alphabet soldier, Paul Richardson, who's now the head of all of Disney's HR department. Alphabet Mafia soldier, made man. He in the Alphabet Army. He runs the HR department. I'm not their cup of tea. Everybody could see that, like, Whitlock may not have it figured out, but this dude is a biblical conservative. He just doesn't realize it, but that's his point of view screams that.
Mm.
I'm just thinking, again, I'm Jason Whitlock. I'm Jimmy's son, Joyce's son, Lovey Kennedy's grandson. I'm not attaching this strong political thing to it that everybody else is. And they're like, we can't have that. We got to have leftists in charge of the undefeated.
And what year
They
was this again? This was 2000.
2013 to 2015.
Oh, so right
Uh,
around the time where I was, so that's a strange coincidence that it's
yeah,
right around the time I got drafted, and you see all of corporate America kind of make this drastic shift towards left wing politics. Not that it wasn't there before. Historically, there's always been that undercurrent of democratic liberal order, but during when social media ramped up and the corporations sort of went online with the politics and the elections became more explicitly left wing. This is all that time period in the middle of Obama.
yes.
Okay.
And so I get run out. And in 2015, I cut a deal to Fox Sports is ramping up again FS1 and says they want to be a competitor to ESPN. My agent at the time cut a deal with Jamie Horowitz, who was the executive running FS1, for me to
Mm-hmm.
go back there under the promise that I would get my own show at FS1. And that was my understanding. That was the deal. Cowherd was coming to FS1 to do his own show. I was coming to FS1 to do my own show. And we get there, and it becomes clear to me, like, oh no, they done lied. Horowitz has lied. And the deal is, and keep me and Cowherd at this time had the same agent. And so I'm not blasting anybody. I'm just telling you the truth, in my opinion, what happened. Cowherd had cut a far better deal than me and had promised them an amount of work to justify the amount of money they were paying him. And so he wanted this second show in addition to his 3 hour radio show. He's promising them this second show that he really doesn't want to do. But if you promise it, it then justifies an amount of pay that they can give you. And so it come to find out, it's like, oh, we're gonna use Jason to carry Colin on this second show. He's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be tired, he's gonna be exhausted, but we'll do Speak for Yourself with Cowherd and Whitlock. Cowherd can mail it in. Whitlock will be the heat on that show, but it will justify this money we're paying Cowherd. He's doing two shows. And so I had to deal with that for 2 years. Cowherd did not, and I'm not blasting Cowherd, but he did not want to do the show. And if he did do the show, what he wanted to do was something very easy and just recycle what he had just said on the herd and then let me talk over around the stuff he had just said on the herd. And he wanted all the topics to be uh, less risky than I wanted to be. And so when it comes to Colin Kaepernick, let's dance around that. Let's not take any strident opinions. Let's not have those types of deep, important conversations. That could get me crossways with the audience and with social media and blah, blah. I wanted to have a real, authentic show. Eventually, Cowherd had done enough. He'd made it through the 2 year process of what he had promised them, and they finally turned the show over to me. And that's when I said, hey, bring in Marcellus Wiley
Mm.
and let's do a real show. And let's have these real conversations. And it took about a year for people to get it. But once they got it, the show was blowing up
Yep.
and the audience was blowing up. We were for 10 months, we were the fastest growing show at either at ESPN or at Fox Sports. Uh, Fox Sports would never promote that because they didn't want people to know that because they were paying Skip Bayless a lot of money to be the fastest growing show. And there's a narrative that they wanted out there about Skip and Shannon. And so people were never told about the success of Speak for Yourself. They could feel it, they could sense it,
Yeah.
they knew what was driving the conversation and what everybody was reacting to. But in terms of authentic promotion and trying to take the show to the next level, Fox Sports wasn't going to do that because that would disrupt the narrative that Skip Bayless was the most important person in sports talk, and Cowherd is number two or one B or whatever to that. Wasn't I wasn't meant to be the star of that, and so eventually it just when they came after we had all this clear success and it was clear that
What
the show
was the
was
rejection of you on the basis of the politics and the type of dialogue you were having, or was it more based on they had already picked Skip and spent the money, or a combination of both?
combination of both. It's a
Okay.
combination of both. It's both things. Look, I cause people to
But really,
call in.
Fox has so much money. If they had been in favor of the dialogue you were having, they would have found the money to pay you more. They didn't like the conversation you were bringing.
Cl- Correct. Look,
Right.
they hired. Yeah, I'm not blasting. I'm facting. They hired a woman named Terry Hines. She worked at Nike, and they put her in charge of public relations or whatever, handling the media or whatever. And she didn't want to deal with the phone calls that I generated.
Of course.
People complaining about my take on Colin Kaepernick. She can't defend that because she doesn't believe. She's with them. She's
Right.
with Kaepernick. She's a part of the matriarchy. Not blasting. I'm talking facts. I'm not trying to throw her under a bus. But when you're someone like me, you have to be surrounded by, or at least have one executive who's got the tummy to deal with the blowback. Bill O'Reilly wouldn't be a success if Roger Ailes wasn't willing to tell the people calling in and complaining, like, no, man, we got a First Amendment right. He said nothing out of line.
Right.
Uh, Rush Limbaugh wouldn't have had the success if he didn't have executives. There were Jill Talbot that was willing to say, no, 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 he's done nothing wrong here. This
Right.
is fair speech. They have to believe it. A black woman in charge of defending me, not gonna happen. Uh, and and so not pinning it on her, but I made everybody uncomfortable because you have to defend. And these most of the executives, like, they just want the phone calls to stop. They don't want to be uh have the Colin Kaepernick crowd upset with them. And so it's like Rupert Murdoch loved me, had me into his office, big fan, and
Mm.
threw some support behind me.
Mm.
But he can't micromanage and he can't give executives the backbone and balls that he has. They can only do. And so, look, Fox was willing to uh, keep me doing that show.
I just want to make
Uh,
this point too while you're right there.
yeah.
I don't think people understand that just your everyday average person does not understand the impact and the ramifications of some of these petty individuals who simply can't deal with phone calls and how much weight that carries, right? Like we look at what we see on TV that's takes millions of dollars and millions of man hours to produce and millions of hours to write and so on and so forth. People see it and they see the finished product and go, well, this all looks real simple. But it's somebody like Jason Whitlock behind the scenes who somebody in some office just doesn't want to deal with the headache of, and you get an entirely different narrative than you would have otherwise. This is how manipulated mainstream media has become. But continue.
And so, at some point, based on my again, there's a conversation that's before COVID where Fox is about to go all in on me. We're having very productive conversations. The highest executives We're going all in. COVID happens, pandemic happens, and they change up on me. And so it gets to April, May, and the conversation's all different. It's, hey, status quo. Let's extend you for 2 more years at the same price. And look, it was a good price. Anybody else would be satisfied. But I knew that, like, well, hold on. If I accept the same price, I'm going to get the same level of resistance. If they haven't anteed up even more, they're not going to give me more freedom. I'm going to continue to remain in the pecking order, right where,
Absolutely.
well, we're paying Skip and Colin Cowherd all of this money to be our lead guys, uh, and we want to keep it there, and that's why we want to keep Whitlock here. He's making a good set. He's single. He has no kids. What's he got to complain about? I mean, he's making really good money, and I'm like, no, man. I really want to do the best show in sports television. I want the best ratings. I want some real support behind me in what we're doing, and they were unwilling to do it. And so I said, you know what? Let me go step out here. I really believe in myself. I believe in my talents. What I should have done, what Bill Simmons and Dave Portnoy and Joe
Hmm.
Rogan and the people, I should have done this a long time ago. Go out and build your own, answer to yourself. And so, I decided to partner with Clay Travis. That I shouldn't have partnered with an atheist pro-abortion guy. That his words not quite what it should be. But I stepped out on my own, proved my point that my brand and what I do, it's not dependent on a platform. That's always been the case for me. You never should have been able to do what I did from Kansas City. You got to move to New York or LA to have that kind of impact, or Chicago. And so I've always believed that. And so, and when things went crossways at Outkick, and, things that were promised did not happen, I felt comfortable going out on my own, and knowing that I could remain relevant despite all the headwinds and all the resistance, and the whole system, the whole algorithm, the whole big tech out. It's all rigged, not against me in particular, but against men like me in particular. They do not want a God believing black man to be leading any conversation in America. They don't want. They know how dangerous that is. They've seen the impact of a Frederick Douglass. They've seen the impact of a Booker T. Washington. They've seen the impact of a Martin Luther King. They don't want that. They want secular, atheist, godless, LGBTQIA plus silent P affirming black people. That's black women and closeted black men. They want them out front and
Yeah.
leading the conversation. And that's, again, it's just not a coincidence. Like Don Lemon, Jonathan Capehart, none of these dudes that they got out front, ain't none of them got
Yeah.
no bass in their voice.
Yeah.
And
It's
so
not a
either
coincidence. Not a coincidence at all.
it's not, so it's either no bass in their voice or no brain cells in their head. That's what gets promoted. That's why Royce White isn't on some major platform. I'm not throwing gas. You're one of the smartest athletes I've ever met, and I've met them all.
Thank you.
Most of them are highly developed physical specimens with limited intellect, and I don't even blame them. I say this all the time. I was like, if I had LeBron James's physical gifts, why would I spend any time working on my book sense? It would be stupid. There's so much money to be made developing my physical gifts. Makes perfect sense what LeBron has done. And so
Right.
to see someone with your physical talent, with your intellect, and your desire to learn and evolve, it's rare. It's very rare, and I'm appreciative of it. But there's a reason why they're not going to give you a mic, and they're going to
Right.
give people that can barely command the language, barely command the language, can't conjugate subject and verb. Uh, you know, that's who's going to get the mic. And again, I like many of these guys. I like Kendrick Perkins. He's a
Yeah,
good guy,
yeah.
but he's nobody's rocket scientist.
No.
Uh, I like a lot of these guys and
Yeah,
understand them. If I was 6'9", I might sound just like them.
yeah.
But
Yeah, and
uh,
it's not. I appreciate you saying that. First of all, it's a unique position to be a former athlete and have spent so much time on my physical abilities, and then know a lot of these athletes, and then have relationships with some of these athletes, and then look out and see your Showtimes and HBOs and Disney's and ESPN's, opting to throw support behind these guys. Not even just on the television side, but even now in the alternative podcast space, you see a lot of podcasts that are popping up that are largely supported by major institutions. So that's definitely taking place. Last to leave us here, and we appreciate your time today, Jason, and we're surely going to have you on. We won't wait another 20 episodes, I promise. Um, Lastly, to leave us here, talk about the inception of Fearless, why you did it, what it's meant to you so far, and where you are growth wise right now, and talk about roll call. Please plug roll call as well, because I know that's coming up shortly. Talk about Fearless and what it's become, and the feedback that you've been getting thus far.
fearless is just an execution of a vision that I was starting with Speak for Yourself at Fox Sports. It's like, hey, let's get a collective of black uh, intellectuals or pundits together, and let's have a real, authentic conversation. And let's let the chips fall where they may. And that was the vision of Speak for Yourself. It's like, hey, if you put me opposite of Colin Cowherd, no one's going to hear me in context. No one's, oh, he's just saying that because the white man, or he's just saying that, or Colin Cowherd, he sound more black than Whitlock. If you put me in an environment where it's predominantly black, and again, it's not that it's an understanding that in order to be heard, the conversation can't be framed as anti-black because I'm just not anti-black. If people go down the list of jobs that I've created for black people, it's an impossible argument. From everybody that's got a job at the Undefeated, I hate to tell them this, but they need to thank me because if I hadn't conceived it, if I hadn't handled my exit the way that I did, they wanted me to exit and blow the whole thing up the same way Bill Simmons exited ESPN and blew Grantland up. That's how they wanted me to exit. I didn't do that. I left it so that these other black folks, even though they're all a bunch of leftist liberals, secular elites that, kowtowed or whatever, they're told. I wanted them to have jobs. I wanted them to have a platform. I didn't want to blow it up. Go look at what I did with Speak for Yourself. It's about trying to duplicate, quite honestly, what Bill Cosby did with the Cosby Show.
Mm.
People love traditional, God-fearing, conservative perspective from black people. They love it. That's why the Cosby Show was so popular. And it's the only way to promote an honest discussion. If there's someone there at the table controlling the conversation, says, "Nah, we're gonna stick to a set of facts. We're not gonna have a conversation just filled with emotion and just filled with whatever's popular over Twitter." And so I'm just doing a different version of Speak for Yourself at with the Blaze and with Fearless, and TJ Moe. Everybody's welcome to the party, from TJ Moe to Steve Kim. It's not an all black thing, but the foundation and base is going to be black. And I'm going to compel and put everybody in a mindset that they can say what they really think.
Mm.
This is like a safe space for people to say what they really think. That's what I did at Fox Sports. That's why athletes would come on my show and say things they would never say on any other show, whether they were black or white. They knew they could say these things without being judged, without being cast out. And every place else, they know, like, oh man, if I mention God, people are gonna get uncomfortable. Not on Fearless, not on Speak for Yourself. If I want to have a conversation about how the LGBTQ has swiped the civil rights movement, you can say that on Fearless. Black people know what's happened. They just don't talk about it because the rest of these Negroes on corporate TV, they've been bought and paid for, and they're owned by the LGBTQ alphabet mafia. I'm not. We're not. And so I'm just trying to create a space where black people can talk the way we actually talk to each other when we think white people aren't listening. That's real. That that gives us a chance for growth and to actually deal with the
Yeah.
issues that are confronting us. And the number one issue confronting us is, the destruction of our family and the matriarchy, this matriarchal leadership. Ladies, love you to death, but you're not meant to be out front and being the leaders. Take responsibility for this chaos your matriarchal leadership has created, and find you a good man, force a man to become good, do whatever you can, but we need some male leadership, some God-fearing male leadership in our community, or we're going to continue to fall into chaos and destruction. And so the show is cutting through. It's growing. People sense and can feel the authenticity of the show. And my biggest critics, they all have to watch the show. Uh, and I know it's a hate watch
That's a
for
good
them,
sign.
but
That's a good
yeah,
sign.
but they can't resist it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, do you know who Stan Verrett is over at
No.
ESPN,
No.
host the nighttime sports? And I mean, this dude thinks I'm bothered by him, but he's constantly tweeting about me. And someone needs to tell Stan he's paying me the highest compliment. I have no idea what Stan is doing on ESPN or even over Twitter. I just know that people send me, like, look what Stan Verrett tweeted about you today. And he probably thinks I'm bothered. He's a sign of my success, that
Mm.
he monitors what I say. It's that important that he stay on top of what I have to say. And so it's just another sign that we're cutting through. And I'm looking at the numbers and the growth on YouTube and on Apple and all that. And so we're cutting through. It's a longer process. There's a lot of headwinds. Big tech puts a lot of headwinds, and my perspective, our perspective, is there's a unrelenting hostility for it,
Yeah.
but it's necessary.
Well, we thank you. We definitely thank you for your time today. We thank you for your work, your over your entire career, and what you've built at Fearless is it's incalculable. The conversations we're having. Look, I'm in the America First movement, a rising voice, you could say, in that movement, and I get feedback from across the entire panoply of America First or conservative cultural commentators, and they all say unanimously, "We love Whitlock's show the best. He keeps it the realest, and he has the best conversation going." Alex has his thing, Steve has his thing, but people really enjoy Fearless, and it's a sign. It's a huge compliment to even be spoken in those regards, and I definitely take it as a huge honor to be able to deal with you and to be able to be a part of the show and what's going on there. So we thank you, Jason, for your time today. I know you got to run. The fight continues, brother. I'll see you on Fearless next time, and we'll get you back on Please Call Me Crazy well before 20 episodes.
You offer me this opportunity. Last thing I'm gonna say: roll call, April 15th. Go to fearlessarmyrollcall.com. We're looking for fearless men that want to be inspired, want to have a good time. We're
Yeah.
going to do it in Nashville. Still time for you to come join us.
Jason Whitlock, ladies and gentlemen. The fight continues. Godspeed.